Hi everybody, my name is Kevin Shah. I am the music coordinator and sound designer for the Cavaliers Drum and Bugle Corps, and I wanted to take this opportunity to walk you through one of the movements of our production from 2025 entitled Shapeshift. This is the fourth movement. It is based on John Sathis's percussion concerto Leviathan, and which is also the fourth movement of that piece. And I'm going to walk you through the decision-making process in the synth and the sound design voices. The percussion was orchestrated by Josh Brickey, the battery, and Lee Allman did all the front ensemble work. And so as we put this movement together, we really were inspired by the nature of the original piece, the frenetic energy of the strings and the orchestra, and how that blended with the concerto element, the percussion element. And so when we started putting this together, I think what we really loved about it was the pacing, the tempo, the 7/8, the metric identity, the kind of the back and forth between the harmonic language of what the orchestra is playing and kind of the frenetic energy of what the percussion is doing. And so we'll start by playing that production as it existed in our arrangement, and then I'll walk you through some of the decision making that went into the synth and the sound design as we put this all together. So let's go. So fun piece, really cool. It was quite a challenge to kind of put together, but it was really rewarding to put together. We had these awesome props and set design that the percussion interacted with as they were playing all this. So that was a whole nother layer of interest that kind of helped elevate this movement. Kind of starting from the beginning, I think in the original, there's this really nice kind of build up from nothing and then a big sharp kind of introduction to that string voice. So this whole introduction kind of starts from a single snare drummer and builds into this entire universe. So by the time we get to about set 98 right here, this measure 25, the idea was that we want to kind of start with a very minimal identity and then build all the way up, kind of traversing through this really interesting harmonic language. So let me isolate the synth parts real quick right here. So already you have these kind of really milky, interesting chords that are just mode mixing. And I think in normal instances, I wouldn't really want it to be this washy, but we kind of wanted to play off of like that milkiness, the way that the chords kind of shift from one to the other. A little bit of a nod to the program so that there is like a little bit of a smear across the way that these chords function. And so this sound in main stage for synth 1 sounds kind of like this. A harp layered with an omnisphere patch. And the other cool thing that is used here, if you could see it in Omnisphere, is this little plugin called Pancake. It's a freebie plugin. It's really cool. It's just like an auto panner. And so what it's doing is whatever is being fed through that plugin. It's just very gently panning it left and right, which just creates like another sense of environment. So listen to the sound, especially on these eighth notes, without the plugin on. So this is kind of what that sounds like. Which is nice because this Omnisphere sound has like a lot of richness and depth to it. But when we add this pancake on there, it's kind of nice because you can hear it gently beating back and forth. Again, it's really subtle, but it creates a sense of space, especially whenever you have a repeated passage like this. I like that plugin to kind of just create a sense of stereo so that the synth patches don't sound too static. And then here's what Synth 2 is playing, a little bit of sound design. So it's layered with a pad, some strings, and a choir. And then within Logic, when we kind of created some of that stuff, you know, you can kind of see there's a lot of automation built into the Logic file. So whenever I was sampling some of this might be the mock-up samples, but I really use the automation within the MIDI to kind of like to really give it some character and some depth, so it just doesn't sound super flat, which again, this is harkening back to the idea of the sound, the shifting, kind of using that as like a pretense for the way that we wanted to kind of design into the music score some of the conceptual ideas in the show. Okay, then moving on. So that's where everything builds up, and then we're kind of building. Right here, we add an extra sound to give a little bit more clarity. So he jumps up the octave. We add this 80s bell. So let's see what that sounds like. And not only do we jump up the octave, we add some of those higher frequencies. And then to balance that out, there's kind of a nice sub low taiko sample that helps round everything out because we've been in this like milky zone. So now all of a sudden the frequency expands right here at this double bar. And then what I did here was I programmed a button to mute all of the sound for Synth 1, because remember, all of these sounds have like a milky reverb trail, and I didn't want that to kind of go past this double bar. And so all I did was I had him play the highest note on the keyboard, and then we assigned these three buttons right here, and each one of these is the mute for each one of these patches. And so when this gets triggered, all three sounds are muted. So let's listen to what that sounds like in context. Right, but it doesn't cut off the sampler because that felt weird when that got cut off. So I wanted a little bit of that tail of the vocal sound. So this was just like a really cool little clever workaround. Instead of having to hit mute on anything within the mixer or having to hit mute on main stage directly, this is just a quick little workaround where you can mute certain patches if you need to abruptly on a double bar, when whether it's the brass or the percussion, if everyone else is doing a mute but you have a sound that has a natural decay, this is a quick way to kind of get past that. And then Synth 2 right here is playing some drum samples that were kind of layered in that give, again, there's a drum set player, and so the drum set player is playing, but the battery's playing as well. And what I wanted to do was to kind of create that epic feel and that growth, and to do that, we did some sample drums here. So that's what this sounds like. And in real life, it sounds great on my computer. In real life, we definitely had to go through and deaden some things up, right? So in real life, that might have been too much reverb on some of these drums. And I'm sure during the summer, we went through and kind of took some things a little further back in the background. So it just adds a little bit of depth without kind of being overbearing. And so it's always my goal to make sure that the soundtrack sounds amazing on my computer, but then 50% of the battle is also like producing it in real time and making sure that it sounds exactly like what we want it to sound like in real time. And so make sure that if you're going to do stuff like this, you're also putting in the effort and the time in rehearsal to produce it and balance everything with the acoustic sounds, because it's totally different once you kind of get it out with the energy of all the other performers, right? So I have to kind of unmute that so we can listen to it all again. And so let's play this whole section again, just kind of focusing on the synth parts. Snare solo. Okay, and so that's where a patch change happens. We've got a little bit of sound design to help finish off the snare solo. Let's listen to what that sounds like in context with just the snares and the sound design. So moving on. So this is the kind of the exposition of the original piece. And what I loved about the original piece is like the nature of the string part. And the marimbas are playing a version of that, but I thought it was the texture of like the strings playing at unison and playing every single note with that articulation on the 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3. Like, to me, that's what makes the piece. And so I was super inspired to make sure that that made itself in, right? But trying to play that on a synth patch with like chords is practically impossible. And so the way that I worked around that is to use something like a chord trigger. And so if in main stage, what the chord trigger is doing is when I hit one note, it's playing 3 notes. So you can kind of see, we had to go through and kind of think about the harmony so that each note that is being triggered, he starts on a C, but each one of these is triggering the pitches that I want them to trigger, right? And so in order to play it, it's kind of thinking of it like a drum part. And so I'm going to play it on my piano, but it kind of sounds like this. You can see I'm playing C sharp and C. And I wanted to put it on 2 different hands because the string patch has some round robin built into it. So it doesn't sound, like exactly the same. It has a little bit of variety to it. And also that way with some velocity, I can play it so it sounds a little bit more real, right? So instead of it sounding straight like this, I can put a little bit of nuance into the way it's played. And when that's blended with the marimbas, it sounds really, really nice. Some of those imperfections in the way that it's being triggered or played actually aren't a huge problem. As long as the synth player can kind of get the accents and the groove right, and it blends with the marimbas and it's not overpowering, but it's not too far under, it just creates like a really nice, almost very human, slight imperfection that a string section needs in order to sound real. I think that provides a really, really nice character and timbre. And I was really excited to do this. So as a string player plays it, they go up the scale. And that adds some pitches as that goes. So let's listen to the computer playback, but our synth players did a great job of making this happen. And look at the chord trigger down here. It was just so much fun to program this. And as you can see, what's cool about the chord trigger is it allows you to create these massive orchestrations for one person that you normally wouldn't be able to play, right? Like, especially like these chords right here, you can see how many octaves are being triggered. And this is just a cool device and a tool that we have within MainStage that you can use to create like really epic moments. And then so Synth 2 is kind of supporting with sound design and percussive elements. And so what was really, really fun about this part is like just making sure that all the timing of some of these drum samples and just making sure the timing of everything is super locked in. So let's listen to just the Synth 2 part. Fun stuff. So let's hear just the synth parts together and then we'll put that all together. If you notice, I've got the pancake again on the strings. So listen to that string part with the pancake on. You can hear it gently panning. And here's what it sounds like with it off. Is with it on. Again, it's really, really minor, and here's what kind of that setting. I just did a little bit in the mix, right? 30%. If I did it all the way up, it would sound a little ridiculous because it's just going to pan the whole thing left and right. So listen, this is all the way up. That doesn't really work. So I just pulled the mix down to about where I thought I heard it a little bit, but it's not overdone. And that is definitely a piece of advice I would give to any of you that are working through some of your sound design is like really, I think it's really easy with the tools that we have and the plugins and everything to kind of overdo things. And I think nuance and subtlety are definitely a part of what makes the sound design layer feel integrated to what the acoustic percussion is doing. And even with the brass, right? So just really try to think more blended and just making sure that we're finding that tasteful balance of how everything works together. A couple other things that I kind of use in MainStage a lot is like this staccato string sound that I have. I use a little bit of overdrive, and it's the kind of what the overdrive plugin does is it just kind of saturates the frequencies that you pick, and it adds a little bit more color and push in those moments. And so in this instance with the strings, I really wanted the kind of the sound of the bow and the hair hitting the string and the rosin and like that kind of juicy dripping sound from the strings. And so what I did was I just turned all the way up or pretty high up on the strings on the frequency, and then I just add a little bit of overdrive. So let's listen to it without the overdrive and you can kind of hear the difference. And then this is with overdrive. And here's the frequencies. So those like kind of is starting to get mids. Now it's boosting the lows, right? So I wanted it to cook a little bit. So it's kind of up in this 9,000 range. So again, the overdrive plugin is something I use a lot in MainStage. Sounds amazing on like strings, sounds amazing on pianos, especially like the low mids for pianos. I just kind of give it some depth. So that's a plugin that I use a lot in MainStage. And yeah, so this was a really, really fun production. Hopefully you got a little bit of insight from the way that we created and crafted this movement, but I'll play it again one more time for everybody. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch and listen to this video. So yeah, here we go. This is the fourth movement of 2025 Cavaliers, percussion by Josh Brickey, Lee Allman, and myself. Here we go.